This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 438 for Wednesday, April 6th, 2022. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Steven is back. You can find him at Steven ESC on all the social media that matters. That's Steven with a PH, not a V, as we'll get into later. And Steven ESC on Twitch, where he has been building the Lego Vespa set that we talked about the last time that he was on. How's that going, man?
That's going really well. I actually enjoy putting the Lego together on stream more than I thought I would. It's about 2/3 done, so I've still got one more stream to do to finish it off, but it's been great.
I really enjoy it. There is something very similar with building Lego on stream and doing Minecraft or video games on stream. Any kind of like lean back experience, not like first person shooters, but like any kind of like you have decisions to make or something cool is happening and you have time to process it and then also chat about it. So like, you put a cool section of piece together, or you realize that the way that Lego is engineering this thing and something dawns where you're like, oh, that's how they're doing that, or that's why I had to leave that piece open, and the whole chat is doing the exact same thing. They're like, yeah, I was wondering why there was a giant hole in the side of this, Yeah. And I find that experience is shared, which is fun.
Yeah. And there's a few parts. I mean, it came up in chat where people would say, trust the process, because there's a couple of points where you're going, Lego, I don't see where you're going with this right now, but I'll keep going. Don't let me down here. And sure enough, they come around and they spend so much time figuring this entire thing out that it's pretty darn tight when it's coming together. So I'm pretty pleased with it.
I was actually able to hang out and watch, I think, both of the streams. And I feel like, well, one, it was nice to just be able to sit back and watch a stream and not like raid someone and then have to watch for 5 minutes before I've got to go eat or do something else, or having a stream on in the background while I was working or whatever. I was able to just not do anything and just sit down and watch. And I remember one of those things that you mentioned on the stream was like these yellow or bright green pieces that do not go in the Vespa as far as color scheme wise, but it looks like they're there as part of the building process for like, I guess instruction clarity would be my best guess. Would you feel that that's why? Like when you do it, do you just notice the fact that it's a different color?
It struck me as odd at first because on some level there's no need to have them as a different color. In the sense that some of them just like a 2x2 plate, which is the flat piece, and they've got some beige ones in there. But there are also some blue ones, the light blue ones, the color of the actual scooter, elsewhere. And so you're like, okay, well, they're just being placed here and then covered by a piece afterwards. I don't understand. I guess the things that I don't understand is why not just keep them blue? It doesn't make any sense whether they're yellow or blue, but I think you made a comment in the stream that it's possible that these are just the more popular pieces. They've already got these ones fabricated. So if it's going to be there structurally, but not be there visibly, then perhaps it's cheaper for them to use, which I sort of get. But then it's I always find it odd when there's a forced green piece, and you can't see it, but it's in there. There's a few of them, so it's I haven't figured it out yet. I've been trying to think of a good reason why, and honestly I forgot to look it up online. But
yeah, when I made that comment, I think that it was thinking on scale. Like you're producing however many 100,000s of these kits to be distributed around the world. And if the green piece is a cent cheaper than the beige piece or the powder blue of the Vespa pieces are really expensive because it's a unique dye that's not used in many other kits, then you'd want to minimize those to the point where,
True.
and it might also be like, and the ones that are being used that are put in there that you still can't see in the end, it could be as something as simple as like when they inject the molds for these pieces. I don't know how many pieces fit in the mold, but let's say it's 64 just because we're both Minecrafters and that's going to make sense, right? But
Yeah.
if you can use 64 of them, but not 65, because 65 means like you have to spill over into a whole other mold, right?
Right.
So like that's why there's going to be some blue pieces perhaps that are inside the Vespa versus some green pieces and beige pieces. For me, it looked like it was, if you're putting together a mass of gray pieces that are all the same color and they all end up being inside the Vespa, it makes sense to make it different colors because then you can see what's going on. It's like when I do the Star Wars ships, when I do my own Lego streams and they have like brightly colored Technic pieces, they serve two functions. One, they have special connections and they allow things to pivot or, attach things at a specific angle or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's red because then you can see it, inside of the black ship or the gray. I think the one that had the most Technic pieces was my Imperial shuttle because the wings fold up in that Y formation, and inside the wings there was all these little ratchety parts and they're all kinds of different colors, but you cover them up with the white plates of the ship, right?
Right.
But it's terribly fun to do. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's really cool to see, and it's a really chill experience.
So there are a couple of things that, as a graphic designer, throw me off in the instructions. Like there are times where it'll, step 137, get this piece, and nope, it's just get that piece. Okay, what is it attached to? Oh, nothing in this step. I just place it on the table. So a single step is grab that piece and have it ready for the next step. Or you'll go to another step and they will get 6 pieces and they'll not all snap in the same area, but they'll like snap into 6 different pieces onto a larger thing. So it's like, the consistency between the number of pieces added in each step seems off. And they also have, they've got their stickers on a sheet, numbered, but the numbers don't correspond to the order that they tell you to put them on, which I found super bizarre. Like the first one they asked me to put on, I think, was number 6, and then I had to go grab number 4. Or like I forget the order, but it was not chronological at all, which is odd. And then the only other complaint that I'll say is like because it's a Vespa, it's centered, and so it's like I guess it's sort of centered on the even, but there are still certain parts of it that are like 5 wide and 7 wide, so it's got to be a combination of pieces because they don't really make 5 long or 5 or 7 long in order to stretch across a certain area. But to go across 5 of them, they'll actually use a 4 stud plate, so a 1x4 flat piece, and then a 1x1 flat piece to go along 5, which seems less structurally sound to me, and I wish they would use like a 3 and a 2 or something like that. But it only happened a couple of times so far, but it strikes me as odd because I always find that the single pieces, like the 1x1s, they'll rotate sometimes, and you can sort of see that they're slightly off. So I spend this annoying amount of time sort of trying to rotate it so that it's flat. And if they had to use a 2x2 or a 1x2 and a 1x3, then they would have snapped properly. So I wouldn't have had any kind of rotating to have to do. Mini beefs, but overall, it's an incredibly enjoyable experience.
I find I fuss around with the little tiny pieces, especially on the final details on the exterior of something like the Y-Wing that had like a lot of little like vents and grates and buttons and things on it. And I find that I'll fuss around with those if they go on not quite facing the right way, which is hard when you're an adult and you have adult-sized hands. It's kind of like when I touch this thing, it completely disappears along with 3 other things around it that I'm trying to line it up with. So it's just kind of like trial and error of like, move a little bit. Nope, that was too far. Move it back. Nope, that was too far the other way. It's like, come on, Yeah. I do find that tricky as well. Watching you made me look forward to my own Lego stream that I'm planning later this month. Fingers crossed. I have the kit picked out, but since it is not in stock currently and not on its way to me, I won't say. I was streaming earlier today from Minecraft, and I was teasing it, but I didn't want to say until I'm a little bit closer to because then I don't want to promise a date and then have the shipment not arrive in time.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
but my birthday is
If
at
it's
like the very end of the month, so that's probably when I'm going to do it that
nice.
weekend. So last
Yeah,
weekend in
fingers
April.
crossed
So
it arrives, and that'd be awesome.
yeah, I mean, as long as it gets back in stock within the next couple of weeks, because I mean, it won't. What's the 6th now? So like, yeah, as long as it's in stock within 2 weeks. Most of the time, I don't know if you found this, but any website, even if it's a big website like Lego or other retailers, if they have a .ca, then I can get it usually within about 7 to 10 days. Amazon's even faster. Amazon's
Hmm.
even faster.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I ordered an upgrade. I was talking about this with Alistair last week. I bought it nearly immediately after the podcast last week, the Elgato Stream Deck Mark II, and I was kicking myself when I went to go buy it because I was thinking, it's nearly the end of April or in the end of March. I'll wait and I'll put this in my April budget. Well, the sale ended on the 31st of March, which they don't tell you.
Hmm.
So I missed out on it was only 10% off, but still it's $20. I was
Still,
like, well, that would
yeah.
have been nice. Because for a while there, the Mark II of the Stream Deck was the same price as the Mark One. And there's not a lot of differences that will kind of like make me kind of jump to the Mark II. It's got a couple of different options for elevation, less options than the Mark One, but it has a detachable USB-C to USB cable, so you can put whatever length of cable you need on it. You
Right.
can, I think it has face plates that you can replace. Not that I really care about that because I like the black. But there's a couple of other things as well. But it arrived today, about 20 minutes before my stream, so I did not have any time to do anything other than unbox it. Which, by the way, Amazon gave me the option of like the package that this arrives in identifies what it is. Would you like to have it arrive in Amazon packaging? And I thought, I don't need to
Oh,
waste another box. I can just if it's in its own box, then that's fine. Well, so all the shipping tags and everything are affixed to the Elgato box. So the only branding on the box that's
oh,
visible is the back, which is like I don't care, but it's a nice box. Like Elgato does a pretty good presentation. Like it's like opening an Apple product, which you and I are
right.
familiar with. And
Yep.
and so it was a cool experience unboxing it, with the exception of that, like the invoice sticker, my address sticker, and like it is completely covered in stickers, to the point where I thought, like, if I ever get a photograph of the original box, I could maybe print one out and tape it over it, uh, if I ever sold it. But not that I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to like it. But anyway, the first thing that happened when I took off the box, it slides right up, and I went, "What? Did I order the wrong one?" Because it is small, and I chalk it up
Huh.
to I didn't look at the actual specs on the website. It says very clearly it is 4.5 inches long, 3.5 inches tall, and about an inch in depth. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, okay, that's right. Like that's what I ordered. So the LCD keys on this are roughly the same size as a key on a keyboard, like on a Windows like gaming keyboard. I thought they were a lot larger. I thought they were closer to the size of a quarter. And that's
Yeah, me
from
too.
looking at like images of them next to keyboards and next to people. And I don't know if there's just like bad Photoshop happening. Any close up of the device, of course, you don't have anything to associate it with because it's just a close up,
No,
and it's like a digital mock up, right?
and
So
it's
you're
always
just
presented huge on the website.
Oh yeah, no, it's very large. But anyway, I guess having just not seen them on anybody else's desks to compare, I sent you a couple of pictures with my phone. I sent you a couple of
Yeah.
pics earlier next to like an Xbox controller and then next to my keyboard, so you have a decent idea of what it looks like. I'll actually,
Right.
if I
Yeah.
have a chance, maybe I'll include these in our show notes. But yeah, and I'm not saying it's bad because I haven't had any time to play with it. I've plugged it in, it turns on. I've had to use the USB throughput on my keyboard because I only have 4 USB 2 ports on my motherboard, which is weird. I really feel like a modern computer should have more, but I will be looking at that the next time I upgrade my motherboard or get a new computer. I'll be looking at having extra USB ports because my
Yeah.
keyboard takes two, my mic takes one, and my mouse takes one, and that's the 4 taken care of. However, like I said, the keyboard has a USB throughput. I've tried it before with my mouse, thinking, oh, this is convenient. I'll just plug my mouse into my keyboard. Except for none of the mouse functions with Razer work with the throughput. So fingers crossed
Really?
that the Elgato software and things work with the throughput. If it doesn't, I'm going to have to figure out something else. I might have to plug my mic into my keyboard. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I mean, it could be something as simple as I have a USB-C port on the back of my computer. So maybe I just have to buy another cable, but like, I don't want to do that either. So we'll see. The good news is, again, like I said, it's got a detachable USB-C cable, so I can put whatever cable I want on it. But it lights up great. The LCD screens are bright. I had to turn them down to about 40% for it to be not like blinding. So that's good. If you're in I'm thinking like if you're in a sunny room or if you've got a bright office or something and you need to be able to see it. So, but you had mentioned when I sent you the size of it that, that might actually be a plus because you don't want to take up too much desk space because you might be looking at upgrading your stream setup as well.
Yeah, when I was like you, I assumed it was going to be larger than that, and I just did not want to have something that was going to be like the size of an iPad mini there all the time because I work on the same computer that I stream from, so I don't want to necessarily have to unplug and replug or move something on to like. I just didn't want the inconvenience of having to deal with something large there all the time. But if that's the size of it, and one of the people in our community, McScrewgun, he said his wife uses it as a graphic designer. So she's got a lot of macros and things programmed into it. So from what I know, she doesn't stream. She just uses it purely to help her with the graphic design work. And that's what I do. So I'm like, all right, this, if that's a benefit to somebody who doesn't stream and they love it, then if it's a permanent fixture on my desk at that point, I may not care. But I love the fact that when I don't need it, it's going to be this small thing that I can just sort of slide to the back of the desk and it won't be eating up a full 6 inches of depth on my desk. I think that'll be fantastic.
Oh yeah. No, like if you put your phone sideways on like one of those little tripod stands or something, it would be the same size. Yeah. Like that's all it's going to take up. Yeah, like it's like a fat sticky note pad, really. That's what Alistair does with his. He mentioned it on the last episode that he uses his when he's editing his Long Range Sensors podcast. He uses hotkeys instead of trying to remember what hotkey does what in the software on his Mac keyboard. He just uses like cut, paste, ripple, delete, like all the standard things you use when you're editing a lot of audio. And he uses the Stream Deck for that. And he's just got the Mark 1. He's got the same 15 keys. And I mean, 15 keys is plenty because you can apparently put like folders, like you can hit one key and it then changes all of the keys to like, oh, you want to be in this profile, like switch to your, if you're playing different games, if you were in Photoshop versus, what do you use? You use InDesign, probably Illustrator. Like you could probably switch it to bit depending on what program. You might even be able to get it to switch automatically depending on what program is currently focused, like front and center on the screen.
Yeah, I believe you can. I'm pretty sure you can, based on what Alistair told me in the past. But it's one of the things I have on my toys to purchase list. I'm a little ways away from that, but I'm really curious to know how you like it.
I'm embarrassed to say that I bought it kind of without knowing much more about them, other than just a couple of key comments from friends. Like I think I mentioned last week that Pixel Revs, who I do the Spawn Chunks with, he uses his like one button to then like open up all the apps that he needs to stream. Like it just starts. It opens up Minecraft. It opens up Streamlabs. It puts them on the right monitors. Like that kind of stuff is cool. I'm thinking it would be great if a lot of the times I want to try to do like macros for Minecraft for like AFK, like if you have to swing your sword every 3 seconds at a farm or something like that. I think that could be really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Could be really useful for stuff like that. So there's all kinds of things. I'm going to have to learn some new skills for it, which I think is good because I've been wanting to get into more programming. I've been wanting to be able to do more with the stream. Like I want to have like animated transitions and I want to have a little bit more fun and interactive stuff on stream. And so I'm looking forward to that. Actually, in part, like inspired by your setup for your Lego stream, which was different than your normal Minecraft stream.
Yeah, and that's something that I really had fun playing with in the last little while. So, and it's fun, and our conversation after that is what got me thinking more seriously about the Stream Deck because I essentially had to use my iPad. Well, I used my iPad to have a PDF of the instructions for the Lego app, so I could see that all the time, and that was connected to my Mac, so that that PDF was showing in a tiny corner on my screen, and I was using it to pinch and zoom on the different parts and the different steps. So people, even though the rectangle was small, you could pinch and zoom on it and see on it. And then I was using my phone as the camera because I don't have a dedicated camera. And I want to get in. I was going to use the Stream Deck iOS app for the first little bit to test it to see if I would then want to drop, the coin on a more expensive piece of hardware. But then I was like, all right, well now I can't. If I'm using my phone for the camera, my iPad for the instructions, I was suddenly without a means to control a lot of stuff. I was still happy to do it, and I really liked the way the setup looked during the stream, but it left me feeling like I was missing a tool that would allow me to take care of some tasks that I would normally use my iPad for. Like I would have Streamlabs up in my iPad and just kind of mute and switch between transitions and things like that, but I didn't have easy access to that, which was a drag.
I'm like you, like I don't want to give up easy access on the iPad, but if I can get used to the Stream Deck and the buttons are clear enough, then I should be good. Like I don't see it being a problem.
Yeah.
But I have less going on. I don't have a camera when I stream yet. I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I've thought about investing in a better camera for the Lego streams. And I don't want to buy a webcam because webcams they're really only good for the one thing. And right now, because of how popular they've become with the last 2 years with the pandemic, they're overpriced for what you get. Whereas you can spend a little bit more and maybe get like a used GoPro or something that's going to have better depth of field. It's going to have better focus control. It's going to have all kinds of different stuff. And then if you do decide to use that as a webcam for like your face for streaming later on, then you could switch it around and just, because a webcam in the corner of your 1080p stream, it's only like 320 or what, like it's not very big,
Right.
So you don't need a super awesome camera for your shot, quote unquote. Because like the thing that I have a problem with webcams on the stream, which I understand the psychology behind it. Like I know that it draws people in because they can see a face and they'll identify with you more as a streamer. But I don't do just sitting and chatting streams where like I'm full screen. I don't do like, video podcasts. And one, podcasting I find is just that nice thing you can sit down and do without having to like get ready. It's like going to the grocery store. I don't care. I will go in track pants and a hoodie, zero shits given. And that's what I like about podcasting is that I'm present and I'm here and I'm prepared, but I'm wearing a t-shirt and gym shorts, and I haven't shaved and like, I don't care.
It's all about expectations though, because my profile picture that I use for a lot of stuff has some funny, messy hair. And it was literally me when I woke up one morning and went, holy smokes, that's awesome. And I just took a picture of it and I like the look of it. So I've been using it as my profile picture. And the first stream I did for the Vespa one, I just, it was after work and I just happened to have my hair sort of parted on the side and tame, like, uninteresting, but just like my normal haircut. And then people were going, what's up with your hair? We were expecting it to be, crazy and all over the place. So I basically said, fine, Sunday morning stream, I'm waking up and however my pillow deemed my hair is supposed to be, that's what you're going to get. And then it looked a little bit more like my profile picture. So people preferred it. So, I mean, I set the bar really low with bedhead. So if I could just keep that going from my on-camera presence going forward, then apparently I'm doing all right.
It's going to be really awkward when you're super successful and you end up going to some convention and then you show up and people are going to expecting you to have like, the bed fro, just like the messy styled look or some nonsense that I can never wrap my head around.
I'll just have to make sure I go for a nap before every time I.
There you go. Yeah, bring a pillow to the con with you, right? Between appearances, just like rub your head on the pillow for static and just like walk around like that. It's au naturel, no product. It's all science.
Exactly. Yeah. Science, the science of hair.
Before we get into anything that we've been watching for the main discussion, what's new? Like, have you had anything else going on in the last month or so since you've been on the show?
More catching up on TV shows still, like making our way through Game of Thrones still. We're almost done season 6, and we finished off all of the Spider-Man movies. Not not the latest one that just came out of theaters, because that's available to rent next week, and we're really excited about it. But just I've seen some things on the internet that may lead me to believe that, and I don't want to know for sure if you know, but sort of lead me to believe that the old Spider-Man actors are going to appear in the new one, because it's like a multiverse. So I wanted to make sure that I was all caught up on the previous ones, because I had never seen the Tobey Maguire ones before. I saw the Tobey Maguire ones, but I didn't see the Andrew Garfield ones, which is a shame, because I really liked those ones quite a bit more than the Tobey Maguire ones. I thought they were well done.
I like Andrew Garfield. I think he's a better Spider-Man than Tobey Maguire, and
Yeah.
different directors too. I'm not a Sam Raimi fan. I mean, the Spider-Man movies from Sam Raimi were what we had at the time, right? Like they
Yeah.
were the best Superman movie, or not Superman. They were the best superhero movie we had in a long time, right?
Yeah, I remember really enjoying them.
Previous to that was probably like not the Keaton Batman, but like the Kilmer, Clooney,
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger Batman. Like no,
Sort of more cartoony ones.
yeah, they weren't the best. Not
No.
that Spider-Man 3 is any good either, but I like Garfield. I did find that the second one, the Amazing Spider-Man 2, well, it got you off to the races, which is great. The problem I had with it was just it suffered from too many villains and it went far too long. I found it a very long movie, but still good. It was just like,
Maybe.
okay, this is, I don't know. I might look at it different, like when you look at, like what am I saying long when I've watched Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Like it's comparative, because back then it was long, but like right now it's probably like par for the course for 2022.
Yeah. And looking back at it, I mean, we've watched it just in the past 2 weeks, basically.
Oh, wow.
And like you said, comparing it to sort of the way Marvel movies are now, there are kind of multiple villains. There are a lot of overlapping storylines going on in the movies these days. So it feels fairly on par to the way Marvel movies are being done now. Maybe it just seemed too busy at the time because it wasn't what we were used to. But I mean, when you look at the Tobey Maguire ones, especially the first one, they had scenes where like Mary Jane would ask Peter Parker a question and the camera would be on him for like an excruciating 15 to 20 seconds of him just looking at her and then going, yeah. And that's it. That's like the only word or only line they gave him within like a 15-second window. And it's so painful compared to what I'm used to now with the Marvel movies, that the Andrew Garfield ones felt far more like what I'm used to now, I guess. So
yeah, he's a little bit more fast talking.
Yeah.
He rambles his way out of stuff, which is similar to Tom Holland. Same idea.
Yeah.
Wisecracking. He's always talking, right? He's always monologuing.
Yeah. But I like his sort of shtick, or like his smart aleck nature as Spider-Man. He's way more. Andrew Garfield was way more confident as Peter Parker, as Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'd be just kind of like these little quips and things like that. And watching the Tom Holland ones again, he's still trying to, he's trying to look cool, leaning against a car while he's talking to, trying to interrogate somebody. So he's just really trying to figure out how to be cool. And Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was kind of already cool. Like it was like he had an entirely different layer of confidence as Spider-Man, where Tom Holland's awkward as Peter Parker and awkward as Spider-Man for the first little while. So either way,
yeah,
enjoyed them all.
Younger as well, right?
Yeah. I enjoyed them. It was really great to go through them all and see all the differences, and now it's like still fresh in like my whole family's mind. So when April 12th, when that's available to rent, it's coming on our television, and we're going.
Why is it available to rent? Like, should I not be able to get that on Disney Plus, or should I not be able to watch that wherever the other Spider-Man movies are?
No, because it's Sony, unfortunately, so it's not going right to Disney Plus. It's got I think, other than being able to rent it or buy it, I think it's Stars, like Stars with a Z, so not Star as in what you can get on Disney Plus in Canada.
No, that's on Amazon. Yeah, Stars is on it. It's like an extra layer to your Prime subscription. You have to add.
Yeah,
it's like adding cable channels. Like I really dislike that the streaming services are quickly becoming the just pay for an extra channel for an extra $5 a month. The cable services that we all ran from
Yep.
to the streaming services, and now they're just doing the exact same model, and it drives me crazy, especially with the whole differences between like Canada and the US. And like, oh, I mean, I get that the Sony, Disney, Marvel thing, like that makes Spider-Man complicated regardless. Like I
Yeah.
get it. It's like okay, like Netflix has got Star Trek everywhere else in the world except for the UK and Canada or something. I can't remember how it goes, but like it's different now with Paramount Plus. Alistair would be screaming at his earphones listening to this, but like it's different now that Paramount Plus is a thing. But before that was a thing, it was Netflix was like international distribution for Star Trek, but then domestically it was different. It had to go through Sci-Fi or Crave or HBO
Mm,
or something.
right.
So yeah, it's frustrating when that kind of stuff all falls into it, because we're not quite at that level where it's all, universally distributed across different countries and stuff, where usually it would be like, the governing country would be the one deciding what gets let in or not that it was a licensing deal. It would be more of like, China saying, no, you can't watch that show here because we don't want you to, versus, saying, well, no, you can watch it in China or you can watch it in Canada. It's just that, HBO has this unprecedented exclusive deal with Bell. Like, well, why?
Yeah.
like what?
And
Because
you've got to buy the $30 a month tier just to be able to see it.
exactly. Like I
Ugh.
will not get off the horse of how expensive and shitty Crave is. $20 a month, $22 a month. When you get taxes in there, and most stuff is 1080p and the stream quality is shite. Whereas on Apple TV Plus, which I have a 3-month free trial on,
Mhm.
they stream their stuff in 4K, and both my Xbox app does HDR and my television actually decodes it in Dolby. So I'm just like, sweet. Okay, this is going to at least look good and not stutter, which was, par for the course. So that experience has been much better. And I don't know, because I didn't check, because I didn't pay for it. Obviously, it's a 3-month trial, but Apple TV is like Disney Plus prices, right? Like it's $10-14 a month. Like it's not in the $20 range, right?
Apple TV Plus is like $5 or $6 a month.
Okay, so it's even cheaper. Better. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have a huge catalog.
No, it doesn't. Which which I understand. They're just sort of they're starting out compared to everyone else. So I'm glad it's it's that price. Yeah, and it's even less expensive if you bundle it in with their other services, which is what we did. So,
right.
I mean, I've had Apple computers and stuff for the longest time, so I'm admittedly all in on the ecosystem. So to save a few bucks by bundling, it was totally worth it.
No, and with a family that makes sense, right? Because you've got boys that are into music, you and your partner listen to music, like all that kind of stuff. Like that makes total sense. Even for me, like Apple Music plus Apple TV would not break the bank. Like that's not something that I would worry about. I think Apple TV plus Apple Music would only be a little bit more expensive than Spotify, and Spotify is just music. There's no TV with that, so well, I haven't gotten into the weeds. I'm new to Apple Music. I'm not a big music guy myself, so we'll see if I keep that one, because I've got that for 6 months. But the TV Plus, not a big catalog, but looks like a quality catalog, which leads me into the first show that I want to talk about briefly before we get into the main topic. But I've been watching Foundation, and I've only seen the first 2 episodes. Right. I did look it up to see where I left off. I know you've watched the whole thing, so I'm going to keep this spoiler free. With the exception of maybe one point at the end of episode 2. So just listeners, be aware of that if you haven't watched. But based on the book series by Isaac Asimov, or at least loosely based on the book series, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. But what I love about the show so far is that it's a sci-fi show that you have to watch. You can't be on your phone. You can't be doing anything else. Like, you have to see visually what's happening. Well, one, you don't want to miss anything. It's a beautifully shot show. Like, it's seamless. It really, really looks fantastic. And imaginative, and like it looks like some sci-fi you've seen before, but other things you're like, wow, that's cool. Like the space elevator that goes down to the planet that takes 14 hours. Like, that was nuts. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff going on.
I like their equivalent of that ships, the engines in the ships, the equivalent of going warp speed in Star Trek. The way that the engines that they've got in those ships look very, very cool.
Oh yes, yeah. The way that they're almost like gyroscopes, like they kind of
almost like a black hole gyroscope thing.
Yeah, it's like they generate some sort of gravity field in fold space. Like it's very, very cool, and it looks very high tech. Like you have no idea at what point in the future or the past. Like it's all over the place. So that's what I mean by like you have to pay attention to it. So I'm liking it, in that way, that it doesn't smack you over the face with it. It's not like Arrow where they're telling you that the villain is the bad guy and we have to stop him like 15 times in a 45-minute show, right? Like it's interesting, and the characters are layered. Uh, it's not exactly a feel good show, at least
No.
not so far. And that's a weird juxtaposition against the beautiful visuals, right? So you're like, oh, I really want to watch this. This looks amazing. I feel really bad for that character. Or
Yeah.
like that character is like making my skin crawl. So Lee Pace does an excellent job as Brother Day, who is the Emperor or the Empire. They call him all kinds of different things. He's the
Yeah,
boss
they're
applesauce,
exactly.
and he's awful. Like he's if he is a human being, I think he's a clone. But if he's a human being, he's like a horrible human being.
Yeah.
Like murderous and like genocidal, just awful. All in the name of like order. So like it's glorified, Nazism. Like it's not it doesn't leave you with the warm and fuzzies. Um, but he's a presence. And
Yeah.
I think I was maybe reminded of how tall he is, but in this you really notice that he's a tall dude. And I looked it up. He's 6'5".
Jeez, I didn't realize he was that tall.
Yeah, that's I mean, like most actors are like 5'10". Like Henry Cavill's 6'1". That's my height. And I'm tall, but I'm not like super tall. I would consider 6'5" very tall. Like that's the kind of
Yeah.
like you're ducking when you're going through some door frames, especially around Halifax,
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's interesting because you don't normally see that, but his presence and his acting just kind of made me feel like, wow, like he is really imposing. And so I looked it up, and yeah, he's super tall, but also super creepy. So like, but in a
Yeah.
in a good way, because that's what he's supposed to be. So like, hats off to Lee Pace.
Yeah, he's nailing that role for sure.
And then of course Lou Lubell's acting is fantastic. She plays Gail Dornick, the main character that you're following through at least the first two episodes, and she's a gifted young mathematician from the best I can muster. Used to be religious, but is now a scientist, that kind of thing. And she does phenomenal in the role. The only thing that, again, is awkward for me is, well, one, she's betrayed. Like she's constantly being led astray by the main characters of Harry Seldon, and I think his name is Hugo. I can't remember the dude's name. He plays Seldon's
Oh, I
adoptive
forget.
son. Anyway, neither one of them seem to be super nice people. They're super smart, but they're very manipulative, at least so far. And so she's being manipulated, so you feel bad for her. And then she's betrayed at the end of episode 2. And this is the small spoiler, so warning folks. But Harry Seldon, as far as I know, is stabbed and murdered. He dies. And that's her mentor / who brought her on this journey in the first place. That's why she's here. And he's killed by his son or adopted son, Hugo, who is her lover, I guess, or at least romantic interest. So he
Yeah.
betrays both of them. And you sort of see it coming in like there's some bad blood there. Like Hugo and Seldon don't get along very well, but like you don't expect them to be stabbed in the next scene. And all of that is layered on top of what I find to be a really awkward romantic relationship where Hugo, I hope I'm getting the character name right, is much older than Gale. And I don't know how old Gale is supposed to be. My guess, the way that they say, is that she's some gifted youngster. So like I'm assuming like high school age, right? So the fact that this 30-something dude is kissing and making out with this really young woman, despite the fact that she's intellectually very mature, it's just skeezy to me. Like all of it just makes me feel awkward. And that goes with like the way that the camera follows her around. Like they're in space, everyone's living together. It's very intimate, even with just between people. And I just find that the camera gets like too close to her when she's like doing her own personal stuff. Like maybe she's just getting changed. I'm just like, I don't need to see the teenager getting changed by herself. Like there's no need. And so it feels strange. I'm sure that it might be that she's supposed to be older, but the feeling I get was that she was very young. And I found that it kind of encompasses what the whole show is feeling like for me. It's a good show. I like it. I'm going to keep going, but it's got this weird mix of awkward and betrayal happening at the same time. And so I'm just like, it's interesting, but it's just like, it's icky. you know, icky in
Hmm.
a social commentary way, I guess.
I guess for me, I didn't really pick up on the kind of uneasy vibes. For me in the first two episodes, I was just again, I guess slightly spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. The first episode is sort of Gale coming to the main planet where the emperor slash empire is, and she meets the great mathematician there. And then the second episode, and they're sort of by the end of the first episode, they are banished to this distant planet.
Yeah.
And then the second episode, they are on the ship on their way there, and clearly enough time has passed that the relationship is already in full bloom. Like they've clearly been dating or whatever for a while at that point, which sort of
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. It threw me off. Like there's just time. Yeah, it left me feeling not quite sure how I felt about the show at the end of the second episode. But then in the third episode, it starts to go, okay, I see what's going on, and then from there, just I felt like it kept getting better. And by the end of it, it was still good, and it still makes me want to see more of it, which is I guess all you can ask for. But it was I guess I didn't really pick up on the uneasy feeling, but now that you mention it, maybe it's because the guy is just so tall, um, and she's, I guess by comparison, just not. So he looks significantly older, maybe just because of his height.
She's a small person.
Yeah,
Lubell is a short actor. Like
yeah,
she's not a big individual. Yeah, she's 5'3". They talk about time passing. They talk about like the fact that when they're banished, they don't have a sublight drive. They have to, or they have to go. No, they have no light speed or no super drive, whatever the hell they call it. But we have to go
right.
sublight speed, which means the journey to this planet that they're going to is going to take like, I can't remember what it was, 580 days, or it was basically like a year and a bit. So it was enough time for, as you say, a relationship to form, but not enough time for her to not be a teenager.
Yeah,
And
fair
if she
enough.
isn't, it's by a thread, and that felt strange to me. And I think it is because she is a petite individual on top of being just short. She's also just tiny all around. So she doesn't look like she's 25 or 35 or anything like that. It just,
Yeah,
it's a strange kind of way that they, I guess, portray it, but I don't know. Either way, I'm on board. It's a beautifully shot show. It's got some really interesting vibes. I like that it's different from most of the sci-fi that we've seen lately. And I confess that, like, outside of Star Trek, most of the sci-fi I've seen lately has been like Marvel stuff. So it's
mm,
interesting to see something that's a slower pace, a little bit more political, has a lot of technology that they just don't bother to explain. Like they just kind of say, this is how this works, and you just have to accept it. Or like you sort of understand how it works, but you're not really sure. And so that stuff I find cool because it does get into like heavy fiction. It's not so much
yeah,
science fantasy like Star Wars. It's more like science fiction. We're like, wow, this is really heady. Like it's really out there. So again, that's why I
yeah.
think you have to pay attention.
And they do explain it more as the show goes on, and there's some neat, like religions within the empire as well that they touch on as well and become part of the storyline in a significant way. So it's really I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I didn't really know anything. I didn't know the story at all. Had read some articles about it, and people were complaining about the looks of the ships and things like that because they didn't look how they felt they should have. But apparently, the books didn't really go into the detail on what these ships look like, so it was kind of left open to interpretation. But I don't know. I thought everything was well done. I'm looking forward to season two.
Yeah, the art direction is solid. Like it's not inconsistent or off. Like for where they are in the level of technology, I feel like it's pretty spot on.
Mm-hmm. And the character we were looking for, his name's Raish Foss, the guy who plays the boyfriend of
Oh, okay.
boyfriend of Gale, adopted son of
Rage.
the mathematician. Took me a while to find it. It was they didn't have it very obvious on IMDb there, so oops.
So replace all the times I said Hugo with Raish. I'm sure people probably knew who I was talking about if they've seen the show.
Yeah.
Moon Knight premiered last week.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have both seen episode 1 and episode 2. So if you don't want those spoiled, then you are going to have to plug your earphones and run around screaming because we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I know that you were looking forward to it. You reminded me that it was coming. I knew it was coming, but I kind of didn't have it on my radar.
Hmm.
But I've been pleasantly surprised. But I'm curious to know what you think, because you are, I think, more recently steeped in Marvel stuff than I am.
Yeah, I'm newly steeped. Like, I'm a huge fan of basically the MCU, and that's been my introduction to Marvel for the most part. Like, I knew how a lot of these characters were, but I'm generally excited when any new show or any new movie comes out. I'm like keen to go and watch it right away. So, um, I didn't know anything about this character, and I thought the trailer did a really good job of just sort of giving you a taste of what it's going to be about without really letting you know what was going to go on. For me, I guess the synopsis of the show, again, spoiler alert, is basically when Stephen Grant, played by Oscar Isaac, a mild-mannered gift shop employee, becomes plagued with blackouts and memories of another life. He discovers he has a dissociative identity disorder and shares a body with mercenary Mark Spector. So as Stephen and Mark's enemies converge upon them, they must navigate their complex identities while thrust into a deadly mystery among the powerful gods of Egypt. And like, for me, I'm so glad I didn't actually read that synopsis before watching it, because I didn't know that he had dissociative identity disorder. And so like when there's different voices and things, and they sound different in the trailer, and they just kind of do these visual tricks and things like that, you're not sure whether it's like an alternate reality kind of thing, or whether it's a possession thing, or what's going on. You know that it has to do with Egyptian gods, but yeah, I'm glad I didn't. That I guess I was able to discover that through watching the show, and I thought that Oscar Isaac is just nailing the role. He's he's quite good.
Oh man, like he really knocks it out of the park. I was on board from the first episode. First
Yeah,
episode of Oscar Isaac doing an incredibly believable British accent, on top of talking to himself in mirrors. I mean, I'm sure they had different takes and editing and stuff like that, but like the fact that he's doing just his regular American speaking voice, when he does Mark Spector, and then he's doing this British thing. But then on top of that, it's more like Mark Spector is this confident mercenary, and Stephen, what's Stephen's last name? Do you remember? Anyway,
Grant.
Grant. So Grant is like mousy and weird, and he's this really awkward like museum employee, like he works in the
Yeah,
gift shop, and then like there's all these layers that they get into, that they throw at you in the first episode, that for every moment that you're like, this is interesting and a little bit strange. And then he talks to some knockout that he has a dinner date with later that week, and you're just like, how the hell did this
yeah.
dude get a date? So you're like, I want to know how that's gonna go. Like I'm very curious about how
and
that even happened.
and he doesn't even know how it happened. She just reminded
Exactly.
him of the date, and he's like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? But like his delivery of the British performance, it feels like it's right out of he's a character out of The Office or some other British
Yeah.
comedy show or whatever. Like, he's got the nervous natter just down pat, and like, oh yeah, isn't it? Oh, right on. And it's just like, it makes me chuckle because he's just nailing that role. It's very enjoyable to watch.
He's not adorable in any way, but he does remind me of Martin Freeman in some of his roles, like in Love
Yes,
Actually, or even
yes,
The Hobbit. Like even as Bilbo has like a bit of that nervous energy, like that kind of like
yeah.
talking your way out of stuff. But he definitely has that nailed down. I was not expecting so much action in the first episode,
No,
and when I thought about action in the show, you think, okay, I knew going into it that there was, the personality disorder, but
okay,
I didn't know any details of it. I just thought, okay, that's
mm,
interesting. A superhero whose secret identity has multiple personalities. That's going to be an interesting take. I've not seen that
yeah.
before. Um, but then when you realize that, like in the first episode, almost all of the action is awkward Stephen Grant. Either having his arm controlled by one of the personalities inside of him and he doesn't know what the hell's going on, or he's driving a getaway van. And what I like,
the getaway
the
cupcake man.
getaway, yeah, the getaway ice cream truck or whatever it was, like they did such a great job of putting in just a little bit of humor here and there. And
Yeah,
sometimes you have to be paying attention to like what he mutters under his breath. Sometimes it's really obvious. Um, and other times it's just like the layered of like there's some like retro hip hop song playing on the Cupcake Van radio when he's driving down the mountain in like,
Oh, right.
I'm not even sure where he is, like Budapest or something. Like it's just he's in the middle of like Eastern Europe somewhere. And what I find so interesting is that he escapes most of the bad guys by just being terrible at like driving, existing. He's afraid, like he's just like awkwardly escaping.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets in real trouble. And they do this thing where like they do a close up of Oscar Isaac and he kind of shakes his head. And obviously Mark Spector takes over. But
Yeah.
when that happens, they don't show you any of it. You're only getting the Stephen Grant perspective. And so when he comes to, there's a bunch of dead bodies and motorcycles wrecked all over the place. And he doesn't know what the hell happened, but he's
Yeah.
alive and they're all dead. And we don't know either. And that kind of mystery really had me hooked for the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
they do give you a payoff. Like there is a glimpse of Moon Knight at the end of the first episode, and there's a cool chase in the museum with some supernatural stuff. And like they pay off your patience, but even more so in the second episode. But
Yeah.
I admire the pacing, and it's because it feels slow from a question standpoint. Like whenever you get a question answered, you have three more.
Right.
So it keeps you hooked. But then there's a mountain chase in a cupcake van. So you're not bored. Like, even though you're waiting to find out what's going on, like you're not at all bored. And some of the
No.
things are just hilarious. Like there's a moment when he has to take a fish back or something, and you know what's happened. You know that he's been away and the fish has died or something like that, and he's having to replace it. And he's looking at this fish like why it has two fins instead of one, and he doesn't know what the hell's going on. And you're just kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. But like he doesn't.
Yeah.
And I imagine it would be pretty fun to read that comic if you as the reader are getting all of the information, but then the characters in the comic don't, so that you know what's going on, but they don't. It would be really interesting to kind of see them kind of puzzle it out, I think. What did you think of Ethan Hawke as the villain, or the personification of the villain, I guess?
I didn't find him super menacing in the first one, and it didn't quite get like what his thing was. Like he's got this cane. It's got the like two heads of a crocodile on it, and he's got a tattoo of the scales with two crocodiles on it as well. I think they're crocodiles anyway, and my wife knows a lot about that, so she just one of those things she used to like to read for enjoyment's sake. So she would say, "Oh, that's supposed to be this and this," and like for the judgment. I'm like, okay, sure, but I had no idea, so it didn't really. And he seems fairly calm for the first little bit. It didn't really strike me as menacing at all. But I find him more interesting now that I've seen the second episode, because again, spoiler alert if you have not seen the second episode, but he was essentially the previous Stephen Grant. Like he used to be the one that changed into the Egyptian moon god Khonshu that Stephen changes into now. So I find that more interesting because now he knows some background story to, I guess, who Stephen is when he changes into Khonshu that Stephen's not aware of. So it's I'm not sure if the way I said it makes sense, but he doesn't come across as menacing yet. Like it's not like, I don't know how Stephen's going to get away from this bad guy. It feels like now it's almost like two storylines are going to run parallel while they both try to get to wherever this crypt is in order to head each other off, kind of thing. So but I don't know anything about it, so it's got me intrigued. What it comes down to. How about you? What did you think of the Ethan Hawke character?
Same sort of thing. Like it's like, well, I get it. Like, he's a good actor. It's it's not bad delivery. I find the writing for the character is pretty standard. Not menacing because he's that calm sociopath. Like he's just always calm. Give me the scarab. I'm not going to ask you again. Even though he just killed somebody like 2 seconds ago. Like he's zero feeling to anything. And the long hair, I mean, this is going to date me, but he reminds me of like the guy from Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. You know, like he looks like he's got this weird 70s long gray haircut. Like it's real awkward.
Yeah.
But I think it was like I was intrigued when in episode 2 he revealed that he also was previously the vessel of Khonshu. So I was like, okay, that has me a little bit more interested in the relationship that
Hmm.
Khonshu has with Stephen Grant and Mark Spector, because it doesn't sound like it's a healthy relationship.
No.
Like, because the idea with Khonshu, which is the god of, is it the moon? I want to say it's the god of the
Moon
moon.
God, yeah.
Yeah. So and it's like moon god, an outcast amongst the gods, for waging one good war on perceived injustices. So if you do something bad, Khonshu is going to come down and give you your justice. And the
Right.
way that Amit works, I think I'm pronouncing that right.
I think it's
Um,
Emmett, yeah.
she is the Egyptian god of death, devourer of the dead, and lived near the scales of justice in Duat, the Egyptian underworld. So the whole thing there, and this is where it's very cult like, is that she takes a look into your future. And if you are going to do something evil, she kills you before you do it. So it's
Yeah.
basically like the precogs from that terrible Tom Cruise movie where they see the future and they pre-crime, all
Oh.
that stuff. What's it called? I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, um,
Oh.
it basically it unfolds into like a conversation between Stephen Grant and Ethan Hawke's character. I'm blanking on the character's name right now. Arthur Harrow.
Yeah.
He They're at some table sharing a bowl of lentil soup. Like there's this weird Harrow gets too familiar, and that's where it starts to feel icky.
Yeah.
Which is good. Like the villain is supposed to feel icky. But they get into that philosophical question of like, well, wait a minute. Would Amit kill a kid if she looks into the future and sees that this innocent child who's 5 is going to kill someone when they're 30? And she just decides that it's best to kill them now.
Yeah.
And Harrow compares the curse and the cure to be the same. So, like, if you've got a diseased limb, you cut off your limb to save your body from dying. And it's gruesome and it's horrible, but it's better than death.
Yeah.
And so that's the justification. And it sounds like genocide. Like it sounds familiar. So, and obviously it's evil, and from all, we'll say, Western kind of terms of consciousness, it's deplorable. Whereas Moon Knight is murdering people. It's still bad, but he's killing killers. It's kind of like what's his face there, the psychopath that kills only other psychopaths,
Oh, Dexter.
Dexter, right? So I've not watched the show. Can you tell?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Moon Knight has that, like, he's a mercenary. He's not like a police officer, or it's not Clark Kent.
No.
Mark Spector is a mercenary for hire. So it has some darkness to it, and you find out again. This adds layers to that relationship between Khonshu and Mark Spector, in that Khonshu came to Mark when he was about to die and said, "You can die, or I can possess your body, and you can live, but you have to be my puppet." And
Yeah.
it seems like it's only ever one more mission. You have to do one more thing for me, and then you're free. And then this just kind of goes on and on and on, because Khonshu just lies. And it reminds me of like all the gods and goddesses in these myths and stories are all just like assholes. They're just
Yeah.
awful. Um,
Master manipulators.
Yeah, exactly. Between like the Greek and the Roman and like all that kind of stuff, they all are just terrible people, or terrible gods, I should say. And what Khonshu is holding over Mark Spector is his wife, soon to be ex-wife, is who Khonshu is looking at as his next host. And so Mark will do basically anything to protect this woman. He's divorcing her, I think, to protect her. I think he loves her. Like, I think that's a strong bond there, because he's trying to always protect her throughout the entire second episode.
Hmm.
And I think bringing in Layla was great. I enjoyed Layla. She's got layers. There's a lot of history with Mark Spector we don't know anything about, and the only glimpses you
Yeah.
get are from her dialogue. right? Because she's talking to Steven the whole time, and Steven has got no recollection of her whatsoever,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
then
yeah,
and then just when they're trying to escape, she just happens to be full-fledged badass as well, and like goes to town and helps them get out of there, which is pretty great as well. So she's
yeah,
got layers, which I think is pretty fantastic.
yeah. Because you think, okay, well, how does Mark Spector, a mercenary, know her? Well, maybe they were in the military together. Like maybe they've got these skills. Maybe she's a thief. Like we don't know. And I'm looking forward to find out. I hope she's in more. There's only 6
Yeah,
episodes. It's only a mini series. It's not super long.
yeah, we're not. So it's as a miniseries, we're not going to get a second season either. So
No.
the big question I guess I have, which I'm really curious to find out, is which one of them is actually the legit owner of that body. Is it Stephen Grant or is it Mark Spector? Because Mark Spector's obviously been around long enough, looking like Stephen Grant long enough, that Layla sees them as married and has no idea why Mark is talking with a British accent. So like he's been, if it has been Stephen and Mark this whole time, you know, Mark was in control of Stephen's body, or in control of the body long enough that he was able to kind of build a relationship, get married, become a mercenary, go to Egypt and do all kinds of stuff. And like we have Stephen as the main character, but by the end of the second episode, it left me sort of feeling like he's not actually the one who's supposed to be there. Like he was almost kind of created. Like I'm wondering if Mark Spector is the actual owner of the body, and Stephen Grant sort of came out of his near-death experience kind of thing. But I don't know.
I think you're right, because I think from the comics, Mark Spector is mainly the alter ego, and Arthur Harrow makes that reference in a second episode where he says, like, so is your mind broken because Khonshu took over, or were you an easy target because you were already broken? Right? And that alludes to a bunch of stuff, like, does Mark Spector have a dissociative identity disorder because of trauma, or has he always had it? He said something along the lines of Stephen always being there, but always in the background, like a fly in the wall or nails in a chalkboard or something along those lines. But now something's happened where Stephen is able to like break through and take control. And now Mark is the one that's always trying to like take control. And that would be my only complaint about the series so far, is that there's an awful lot of Mark in the mirror saying, Stephen, let me take control, Stephen. Stephen, hello, Stephen, Stephen, listen to me, Stephen. I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand what you're trying to do, but like saying his name over and over again and saying the same phrase over and over again, for me, it's a problem from a writing perspective, because like you've got your message across, your audience is not stupid. So repeating yourself doesn't help. And especially when we know that's not what works. Like the only thing that gets you into Stephen's body, like the only thing that lets you take over is either imminent life and death, or he lets you. That's it. Yeah. It's like a gut reaction. And that's where I think that Spectre is the true owner of the body, is because when it is life and death, Spectre comes in despite Stephen's resistance,
Resistance, yeah.
But yeah, I would be remiss if we didn't touch on the fact that the cinematography is phenomenal. The way that they flip back and forth between Mark and Stephen, they give you glimpses in the mirror, but obviously it's like special effects where they're like, Stephen isn't moving, but then Mark Spector is, but it's a reflection. Like there's all kinds of really cool stuff like that. There's also a lot of really cool establishing shots and transition shots that are like straight out of comic books. Like there's a shot in the second episode where they're looking straight down at a road and you're watching a car drive into an alleyway. And like, it's the kind of thing that you see in comic books, because like it's easier to draw that kind of stuff from above, but it also gives you more of an establishing shot. And it's something that you can do because you can put the camera anywhere in a comic book. And then you flip to what I'm assuming is fan service for when he turns into Moon Knight and kicks some ass. You get some really cool action sequences in the second episode. And then he's like doing parkour and like jumping these superhuman jumps across alleyways and rooftops. And like the moon is behind him and he's kind of like, he might as well have a football with his hand out, right? Yeah. Like he's just doing these cool like comic book poses. And it's fantastic. And I had some reservations about the first episode with the shot of the costume. How do you feel about the costume?
Um, I'm fine with it. Like I said, I didn't really know anything about this at all, and yeah, like for me, I think it looks like a pretty cool costume.
It
I'm
looks
not sure
better
what
in
it's supposed to look
motion.
like.
Yeah,
Pardon?
I think it looks better in motion.
Yeah.
When they do the still shots of him standing, when it's actually Oscar Isaac or a stunt double, whoever it is, in the suit, just standing there, there's too much around his head. His head looks too big.
Mm.
Because in the comics, of course, he's meant to be wrapped up like a mummy, which is going to be awkward and take forever on the set of a
Yeah.
show. So it looks like he's wrapped, but it's very clearly a mask that he puts on, like a Deadpool-esque type thing. And I thought that it looks good from a distance and when he's running around, but when you're up close, his head looks too big for his shoulders. Like it basically takes his width. It doesn't make him look like a
Right.
superhero. It makes him look kind of like strange. But they do enough magical stuff with the cape. There's a lot of CG going on with the cape, and I think it works overall. Um, but on close-ups, it really does look like a hockey mask. Like it's a little bit thick. I
Mm.
liked. I thought the fight was too awkward, but I liked the look of the suit when we find out that Stephen Grant can actually summon the
Yeah.
powers of Khonshu, and he's in a suit, but he's in like a shirt and tie and a
Yeah,
jacket.
like a white, like a cream white 3 or 4 piece suit with a vest and everything, and it looked pretty darn sharp.
And they do the mask on that like Deadpool, and that works better.
Yeah.
Because then it looks like a hood. It doesn't look like a hockey mask. And
Right.
they animate
Okay.
the eyes, and they do all kinds of really cool stuff. And again, like you say, oh, it's a cool suit, but you don't for a minute think like it's just a guy in a suit. You're like, that's a cool look, and then you're right back into being lost with the fact that he's fighting an invisible jackal, in the middle
Yeah.
of
I thought they did
downtown
that well
London.
though. Like we were watching that, and it looked like, sometimes they have it like a looking fairly goofy looking, but it almost looked like they had a fight going on with somebody in a green, like a green screen suit, and then just took them out because they would kind of bang them off the car or lift them up and slam them into the car, and it looked like it was actually, if not actually happening, looking like it was happening far better than anything else I've seen it in before. So I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, I thought the effect was cool. I thought they maybe overdid the fact that we couldn't see it because I'm just like, okay, I get it. I can't see the bad guy, or other people can't see the bad guy, but I'd like to see the bad guy because it's a cool looking CG jackal, and I would like to, actually,
Yeah.
watch this fight, which you do get to see
I,
eventually.
yeah, I think they could have probably done it a bit more, but I did like, I liked it because Layla was getting in there and, kind of getting the mix of the fight as well, and she couldn't see it, so she's just like swinging stuff or throwing glass and things like that. So when she's in it and she's getting, beaten up because she can't see it, I thought it worked well.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right though, when Moon Knight was fighting the creature, it would have made more sense to have it visible more often.
See it, yeah, exactly. No, I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
The last thing that I'll lay out there, which I haven't tried myself, but I did find out via TikTok, is that if you see a QR code on screen, you should pause it and you should scan it with your phone.
Oh,
Because
I might just have to go do that.
yeah, the QR code that is on the wall of the museum in the first episode actually links to a copy of Werewolf by Night number 32, which is the first appearance of Moon Knight in Marvel Comics.
Cool.
So you can go and read the comic. There is another
Nice.
QR code outside of Mark Spencer's storage unit. I believe it's storage unit number 42. That's in the second episode. I saw that. I thought, okay, I'm spotting them now. So I'll have to go back. But I watched it just before the show tonight, so I didn't have time to like look it up and see what it was. But I love the fact that they're doing that. It's a neat idea. And we see QR codes all the time. I'm not someone that thinks to stop a film and say, I wonder what that actually goes to. I don't know why it just doesn't dawn on me to do it. But now that I know that Marvel's going to do stuff like that, it's like, well, geez, anytime I see a website, like if someone...
Now I got to click on everything.
Exactly. Well, like if somebody in a show, like, and imagine in like WandaVision show, if they're going to a website in that show and they type it in something.com, like from now on, if I see that in a Marvel show, I'm going to go type it into a browser and see if it's actually like, did Disney actually register the domain and put up a website? Because they probably did, and that kind of stuff is just hilarious and fun. But I think it's a great idea because then for people that aren't familiar with Moon Knight and aren't familiar with the comics or don't read comics because they just haven't in years, it's a free copy to digital copy to read, you know?
Oh, it's a free copy.
I think so. I think
Cool.
I'm remembering a TikTok that went by like the other night, so I could be wrong about this, but
Yeah. Oh, it would be cool. It would be cool if they made it free, and then if you wanted to read the next issue, you had to subscribe to.
oh, probably.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sure.
and I'm not saying that because I
Disney
want to spend
all.
the money to have to read them all, but yeah, like to get into the Marvel comic subscription thing too, that'd be pretty cool.
Oh, well, and actually, I'd have to look this up. I'm pretty sure that one of the benefits of me having a subscription to something, I think it might be Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, but I've got like a free month of like Marvel Comics or something,
Ooh,
or
cool.
Comixology, or like there's a couple of things. They've fold this stuff in all the time. The trick is to remember to turn the free samples off, which I didn't do this past month.
Yep.
I've had 3 free months of Discord Nitro, which just basically lets you use your emotes in other rooms and lets you upload larger photos and stuff like that. But it's $10 a month. It's not worth $10 a month at all.
No.
And I had 3 free months and it renewed on April 1st. And that was a weekend. So I wasn't thinking about my bookkeeping and stuff. And so they billed me for the $10. I canceled it immediately. So they got the $10 out of me for April. And then on May 1st, it cancels automatically. So there's that. But it's just like, they got me. I was so mad.
I know.
I was so mad.
Overall, I'm really enjoying the show, though. I guess I only have 2 complaints, I guess, sort of, would be Khonshu's dialogue. Like, for an ancient Egyptian god, he's fairly like, oh, the idiot's in charge again. Like, it just doesn't seem like the delivery that I would expect from an ancient god. I like the voice. I think is F. Murray Abram is the actor.
Mm-hmm.
I think his voice, the presence of his voice is good. But I kind of wish he had an Egyptian accent and didn't say things that were like 20th century current kind of thing.
I guess in one part you think that like that's almost what you expect, but it's the same way that like why do all Greek and Roman gods in film have British accents?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? Like there's stuff like that I find kind of strange. But the other thing too is that like it is a god that's been possessing people throughout history, so it's experienced all 2,000 years of language that up until current point. But I know what you mean. You think it would be at least have something unique where like he doesn't use contractions, like instead of saying can't, he would say cannot, like that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Just a little bit more regal sounding, or at least condescending.
Yes. There's just something about it. It was enough that it took me out of it. I'm like, oh, why is he talking like that? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
No, please don't do that. And the only other thing that took me out of it was when Stephen was supposed to go on that date with the woman from the museum, and he's just oblivious to the fact that 2 days have gone by, but he called her on a smartphone, which has the date and time on the front of it, which is automatically updated constantly by the satellite. So it's like there's no way he wouldn't have known that 2 days hadn't gone by.
Yeah, I did find that. I mean, I got the joke, like, or not the joke, but I got the situation is that like, he thought he was going to have a date and it's not even happening because of course he goes psycho and missing for 2 days and he has no idea where he's gone.
Yeah, fair enough. It was at the pet store. He realized the time. Was like, oh crap, I've got a date, and he left. And if he had just gone and only opened his phone long enough to see the clock on it, not necessarily look at the day,
yeah,
then I guess I'll let it slide. But it took me out of it a bit as well.
Yeah, that was a little bit strange. I agree. I thought it was funny that he's a vegan and they ordered a steak. And there's even a moment later in episode 2 before he really accepts all that's going on, where he still thinks he's going crazy, and he sits down and he puts his head in his hands. He's like, I eat one steak and I lose my mind. He's like, never again. I thought that was pretty good. Well, that brings us into the Internet Minute, which is brought to you by you, dear listener. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you get value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server, which is shared with my personal Discord, and access to the Barista Cut audio sessions. That's true of all patrons because we've passed the milestone goal. Big thanks to Smurf 588, our bean counter patron this month. Patron count is at 27. You might note that is one more than last week, which is our goal. So if you'd like to be 28, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Well, speaking of sci-fi, I have a couple of very quick teaser trailers to throw out to the public. You've probably already seen these. Paramount Plus had their announcement day. the other day. I have Alistair to thank for sending these to me via text message. Star Trek Picard has announced the cast for season 3. Have you seen this? Did you have a chance to watch this
No,
before? Okay.
it's basically I haven't been able to watch any of it.
So it's goosebump tingle territory, but essentially it's just Picard writing something at a desk, and then the voices of several, in fact, almost all of the Next Generation cast are echoing in his head, talking about, it's Geordi, it's Riker, it's Crusher, Data. Anyway, they've announced that like the command crew from Next Generation is all on board for season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and it's just a whole nostalgia vibe, and it's great. I'm sure that the collective Star Trek fans across the globe are losing their shit because even I was just like goosebumps. Like I cannot wait, because that's the Star Trek that I grew up watching with my dad.
Yeah.
And speaking of Star Trek, the official trailer for Strange New Worlds is out. We talked about the teaser trailer, I think, a couple weeks ago here on the show. This is the full-on action-packed sequence. Kind of really gives you a full idea about what the show, the personalities of the command crew is going to be like. Anson Mount, I think, is fantastic as Pike, and was on Discovery and will be in Strange New Worlds. He's excited. His Twitter is just kind of like, pinch my 12-year-old self. Like, this is nuts. I can't believe this is coming out on May 4th or something. May 5th. And I am jealous of the man's chair on the Enterprise, and I'm jealous of the man's hair. Talking about the just woke up look. You might want to take a look for future webcam situations, but
hair inspiration.
Yeah. And the thing that I like so much about this is that it is a very colorful Star Trek. Like if you look at the original series and how bright the uniforms were and how bright the bridge was on the Enterprise, it's like that. There's red and chrome and blue, and then of course there's the primary colors of all the uniforms, and like it's sharp. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be probably funnier than most people are anticipating, but I think it's going to be like Firefly funny, like shoot from the hip funny kind of stuff, because that's the kind of captain that Pike seems to be. And so I'm on board. So I hope people will check it out. We will have all the links in the show notes for the episode, and I'm sure I'll be covering we'll continue to cover Picard, but we'll be covering Strange New Worlds when it premieres on the Citadel Cafe. What is your pick this week, sir?
Well, in the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking about just Mac utilities that I use all the time and save me tons of time just on simple, repetitive tasks. And I guess one of the ones I just figured was worth mentioning because I love it. It's called Drop Shelf. It's by a company called Pilot Moon, and as per usual, the link will be in the show notes. But it's a drag and drop utility. So like, it's a tough thing to explain. But sometimes when I know that I'm going to send somebody 4 different PDFs for my job, I have to do that sometimes just on design standards. But they're all in different sections because the design standards relate to different projects. And so I either have to go to the folder and then drag it into the email attachment, then go to another folder, or then switch away from the email application to the Finder again, grab it, drag it, go back, and do that 4 times in 4 different folders, or just click the attachment button and have to do that manually through the interface. Or I use Drop Shelf, and basically what I can do is you just grab a file, drag it to the edge of your screen, this little shelf pops out, you let it go, and it stays there. And then you go, and you can just go grab all the files you want and continue to drop them on that one shelf.
Nice.
Then I go back to the email application once, drag them from the little shelf, drop them on the email application, and boom, they're all there as attachments. I use it for other things as well, just like primarily when I have to collect a number of different files or images from different folders that I then want to create a zip folder of to then send off to a client or something like that. It's just, it costs about $5 usually, but the developer right now is in the process of updating it to be compatible with Apple's M1 and M2 chips. So it's just, they have it available for free right now, like the beta version, and it works just as well as the previous one did. And it's become sort of indispensable in my workflow. One of those ones I install on my computer every time I have to do a fresh install. So it's called Drop Shelf. I recommend you check it out.
Free is good. I am going there right now. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Stephen and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. You can check out my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. And you can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 1 o'clock Atlantic. That's UTC minus 3 hours. Stephen, where can people find you online?
The easiest place is on Twitch as well, at twitch.tv/StephenESC, again with Stephen with a PH, where I have one more stream left to do on my Lego Vespa. So by the time this comes out, it'll probably already be built, but you'll be able to catch the video on demand there if you want to check it out.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.